Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 32nd episode of the Startup Boston podcast, where I interview entrepreneurs, investors, and influencers in the Boston startup community to uncover actionable advice and stories from their experiences. I'm your host, Nick Dupuy. Today's guest is Rachel Spekman. Currently, Rachel is the Director of Programming at MassChallenge, which describes itself as the most startup-friendly accelerator on the planet. MassChallenge awards over $2 million in equity-free prizes every year to help high-impact startups succeed. A few things we talk about in this episode are what sets MassChallenge apart from other accelerators, what the curriculum looks like and what mentors are available, traits she's noticed among founders who have been the most successful at MassChallenge, and advice for founders applying to MassChallenge. If you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes so you can get all of the new episodes as soon as they're released right on your podcast app. And as always, you can find today's show notes at startupbostonpodcast.com. And you can reach me at nic@startupbostonpodcast.com. Enjoy today's episode. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get started, can you give people a little background about yourself?
I'm Rachel Spekman. I'm the Director of Programming at MassChallenge. I've been here for about a year and a half. I have a background in education, nonprofit work, and I'm thrilled to be on the podcast.
How did you first get involved with MassChallenge?
So I first got involved, I was actually on the 1 in 3 Council for the city of Boston. And I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a fantastic organization. And I learned about MassChallenge there. I'd known about it for a while. I had been working at schools and in different nonprofits and always in the startup community. And I knew after I finished an MBA that I wanted my next career move to be working with startups, but not necessarily at a really small startup. Mm-hmm. And I feel like MassChallenge, it was a dream in terms of exactly what I was looking for.
Can you give us an overview about MassChallenge?
MassChallenge is the most startup-friendly accelerator on the planet. We run a competition model. It's a 4-month accelerator. And at the end of the accelerator, we give away $1.5 million here in Boston to about 20 of the companies.
When you say the most startup-friendly, what does that mean?
So startup-friendly, right? That's a very bold claim. We think about startup-friendly as completely not-for-profit and no equity. So what that means is we're all about helping startups drive more impact and not about taking equity back from the startups.
Okay. So what is the application process like for startups applying?
So it's very competitive to get into MassChallenge. So for example, in 2016, we had about 1,700 startups apply just for Boston for 128 spots. So we like to say that we actually are more competitive to get into than Harvard, for example.
So why doesn't MassChallenge take any equity from the startups?
It's a great question. So MassChallenge was founded in 2009 by John Hawthorne. And he was working in the private sector, and really his mission in starting MassChallenge was, why are startups out there fighting for different opportunities? Why aren't the opportunities coming to startups? So we kind of call it recreating the pie. So if you think about kind of the distribution of wealth, why aren't startups really driving that wealth? And why aren't the opportunities coming straight to the startups? So with that in mind, MassChallenge was created with putting startups first and startups at the center, and not worrying at all or focusing on the profit side of it.
So where does your money come from to operate and give out to awards to the startups?
Yep. So we work with over 100 corporations that are sponsors of MassChallenge. That's a combination of corporate partners, foundations, government. And so that's really who and where our funding comes from.
Who are some of your sponsors?
So there's a lot of them. A few names that you'll likely know. IBM, Microsoft, Bueller, Bose. We work with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the Boston Foundation.
What do you think sets MassChallenge apart from other accelerator programs?
Great question. I think there are a lot of things. I think one thing that really sets us apart is, in many ways, I would say our network. So our network is expansive. For example, we have about 400 mentors that are working with startups in Boston. As I think I said earlier, we have 1,200 alumni that have come through the program, the majority of which were based in Boston. And it's really tapping into those resources. We aggregate those resources and the connections and bring it to the startups.
What mentors are available to startups, and how does that mentor startup matching process work?
So there are many mentors available to startups, like I said. So in terms of what mentors are available, there are about 400 from all different walks of life. So that's anywhere from our legal partners to experienced seasoned entrepreneurs, to niche industries. So somebody who is an expert in, let's say, consumer packaged goods. So if you're a startup and you have a particular need, I think kind of to get back to your earlier question about what makes MassChallenge special and unique is that we take startups from all industries. So that means non-for-profit, for-profit, high-tech, social impact. We break things down into 5 core industries. And so kind of that broad network. But in terms of mentorship, kind of your original question. So what we do is we recruit these mentors, and then we have a series of mentor matching events at MassChallenge. So it's a mutual matching process. We don't necessarily assign you a mentor. We don't assign mentors at all, actually, but we create the tools both through technology. So we have an algorithm, a mentor matching algorithm on our dashboard, and then we create a series of opportunistic events for you to meet the right mentors.
Okay. So what are some of those events?
So we call them our mentor matching nights. So those events it's speed dating for mentors, actually. So when you apply to MassChallenge, if you were to get in, we do a survey and say, what are the top things that you're looking for in terms of mentorship? So we do a combination of creating these events, creating the tech tools, and also curating introductions. So if you got in, we would say, here are the top 10 mentors that we think you will personally benefit for, so that you can start your journey in a very specific way.
Okay. So beyond mentors, what other resources are available?
So mentorship, I would say that the key resources at MassChallenge, and there are many, I would say mentorship is probably number one, just how vast and deep our network is. Second is our relationship with those corporate sponsors. So we do a lot of demo days, a lot of opportunities for startups to connect with large corporations. Third, I would say our curriculum is pretty expansive and deep. So we had about 75 curriculum sessions last year on all kinds of topics. And then those mentors also participate in office hours. So we had about 1,800 office hours offered last Accelerator.
What does the curriculum look like?
The curriculum, it's an interesting process. How do you think about what kind of curriculum 128 companies at different stages and within different industries needs? So that's my role. So this is my wheelhouse. The curriculum really is topical. So it starts with product market fit, moves into product design, and doesn't have to be hard, tangible product, but it can be what is the design of your nonprofit? And then it moves into what are the legal issues that you might encounter? How do you think about your customer market? So there's pitching, financing. It really touches on everything that a startup needs to go from A to Z.
Are those workshops?
It's a combination of workshops, panels. We bring in alumni. We bring in experienced entrepreneurs.
So what do you think makes an accelerator program successful?
I'd say it's a lot of different ingredients. I think for MassChallenge, we're really excited that we had our highest net promoter score, which is how we measure if we're really delivering the high quality services that we say that we're doing to startups. So 2016, we're happy to say, was our highest net promoter score to date. So I think in terms of what makes an accelerator tick, I would say it's a combination of having the right resources in place. That means the best mentors, the best leaders out there, the best speakers, bringing those directly to the startups. I think second is having a team of staff that are incredibly motivated and want to do everything they can to help the startups. And I would say the third thing is really depending on peer learning. A lot of the startups learn just as much, if not more, from one another than they do from some of the formal curriculum that we have.
Are there any resources that you offer that you think founders and startups should be taking more advantage of?
So I think office hours is a tool that startups can continue to take even more advantage of. So for example, we have a seasoned, experienced entrepreneur coming in Wednesdays every week of the summer. And as a startup, you get so busy and so heads down that it's really important, I think, for a startup to basically pick their head up and realize, wait, I'm here to accelerate my business. Who are the experts in the community that can help me out? And how do I take advantage of that?
What are some things that MassChallenge has done to improve the experience for startups and founders going through your accelerator?
I think over time, we've really honed in on what it is that startups need to accelerate. So for example, 2 years ago, we noticed that many of the hardware startups were outsourcing their hardware. So we created Made at MassChallenge, which is our R&D lab. And now startups can create their tools in-house with our engineers on site. That's one example. We also started the Newton Innovation Center. So for a lot of startups that are coming from outside of the city, we now have a partnership with the city of Newton where they can take advantage of many of MassChallenge resources, but not necessarily have to come downtown for it. I think those are a few of the things. I also think even just creating the right atmosphere for startups. So creating the best conference rooms, the best phone booths, having a ping pong table, creating even this building, great food downstairs. So really making it a fun, thriving atmosphere is where we're continuing to grow.
For MAID, is there full-time people that work in there to help the startups with their hardware? Is that how it works?
Exactly. So we have a MAID director, we have a MAID engineer on site. This summer we had an entire team of lead engineer interns that were working with the startup. So it's really a consultative model.
Tell me more about the Newton Innovation Center and how you came to collaborate on that with the Cambridge Innovation Center in the city of Newton.
So the Newton Innovation Center, the idea for that was actually born on an airplane. John Harthorn was sitting next to the mayor of Newton, Seti Warren, and they were talking about how they can bring the resources that the city of Boston has out to the suburbs. So together they brainstormed, what if we could have MassChallenge out in Newton? And we worked with the city of Newton, the CIC, and of course all of our resources at MassChallenge to launch the NIC. So we have about 40 or so startups working out there, alumni that have gone through MassChallenge, entrepreneurs in the city of Newton, and then the CIC is providing a lot of the resources in terms of physical space.
Okay, so who has access to the Newton Innovation Center? Is it alumni and other startups from the CIC?
Exactly. So it's alumni through MassChallenge, startups through the CIC, and then we actually are launching an NIC only membership. So if you are an entrepreneur in the city of Newton, not necessarily affiliated with the CIC or with MassChallenge, you can still have co-working space available to you.
Okay. What initiatives at MassChallenge are you most excited about?
There are a lot of them. The initiative that I'm most excited about is the diversity initiatives that we have at MassChallenge. So in 2016, we had 42% female founders, and that number is growing every single year. And that's within Boston and also around the world. It's growing for our other MassChallenge sites. And I also think in terms of racial inclusion, industry inclusion, we're just really broadening that scope. So we have a partnership with the Boston Foundation, the Kauffman Foundation, that's focused specifically on recruiting entrepreneurs from underserved communities. And these are just things that I am so excited about.
Tell me about Pulse.
Yeah, Pulse. It's such an exciting initiative. It's awesome. It's our newest initiative that's launching at MassChallenge. It's in the Fenway area, and I encourage anybody to go check it out. It's right next to Hatch Fenway. So what Pulse is if you think about the startups at MassChallenge, as they continue to grow beyond MassChallenge, what are their needs? Well, Pulse really helps address those needs in a brand new market. For startups that have gone through MassChallenge that are digital healthcare startups, it is the experience for a more advanced digital healthcare company. So what's happening there is it's a partnership with MassChallenge, the state of Massachusetts, many of the local hospitals in the area, a lot of our insurance companies in Massachusetts, and all coming together to solve large healthcare needs.
Are there any traits you've noticed amongst founders who you think have been most successful through the MassChallenge Accelerator?
Being hungry. So for example, hungry comes in all different stages and all different forms, but being hungry is meeting somebody, immediately following up with them, kind of being on top of it, and really also being specific when you get to MassChallenge. Here are the 2 or 3 things I want to get out of this. It's a large program. If you come here and you want to learn how to start your startup, you might take advantage of the curriculum. If you want to figure out, 5 years from now, I might want to get acquired by one of our corporates. So having those specific goals in mind, I think really help distinguish the founders here.
What advice would you give to a founder who was accepted into your MassChallenge program?
We work with our mentors to give really thoughtful advice. And I think one of the big pieces of advice that I would give is be strategic about how you want to use your time here. There are so many things to take advantage of. Events, corporate connections, mentorship, office hours, curriculum, partnerships that we're part of. Think about which ones are going to be most advantageous so that you're using your time wisely.
What are some of your favorite success stories for companies who have gone through the program?
So I think success is a really interesting word. And when you apply to MassChallenge, we ask startups to define impact. How are you creating impact? And that can be in terms of time, saving money, saving lives. And I think when you think about success, you can also think about the same thing. So it's a little challenging to answer that question because some startups have been successful by raising money. Some startups have been really successful forming strategic partnerships with the city of Boston and agencies all over Massachusetts, the globe. I think other startups have been successful in building their team. So it's a little bit tricky to answer that, but I think so many of our startups are progressing and making success out there that it's impressive and blows my mind every day.
What is the culture like at MassChallenge, and how do you ensure that you don't stray away from this?
The culture is very fast-paced, and I like to say that what MassChallenge gets done in a week, it took my last job 6 months to get done, whether it's giving a tour to a delegation, pulling a large event together, pulling press together. So things are moving really fast here. And I think how do we keep that culture alive? It's by bringing on the right team members. It's by ensuring that the startups are on board with the culture.
What makes you most proud to be a part of MassChallenge?
I think it's twofold. I think what makes me most proud is seeing the success of the startups and seeing the startups win, whether it's by, again, adding to their team, raising a round, figuring out their product market fit. I'd say that's the first part, is just really feeling the success of the startups. And I think the second is the team at MassChallenge. It's an incredibly smart, driven, hardworking team that pushes me to do more every day.
What does the future look like for MassChallenge?
Future looks great. So we started in 2009, as I said. We are now in 5 cities around the world. So we're in Boston, London, Lausanne in Switzerland, Jerusalem, and Mexico City. And our goal is by 2020 to be in 12 cities. So we are expanding, and that's a little bit of what the future looks like at MassChallenge.
What advice would you give to an entrepreneur who wants to apply to MassChallenge?
So my advice to startups that are thinking about MassChallenge would be think long and hard about if this is the right accelerator for you. Some people want to go into industry-specific accelerators. They want to go into accelerators where they're taking equity from you. And MassChallenge is a little bit unique. We have a really broad network, and we have a really expansive network, and we don't take any equity. I think that's the first part. I think the second is, if you get into MassChallenge, this is a really serious commitment, and we hope that you take it seriously and are very engaged. I think the more engaged you are in anything you're doing, and especially in MassChallenge, the more you're going to get out of the program.
I want to move now into our rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So the first question is, what's a startup in Boston you're most excited about?
There's so many startups in Boston I'm so excited about. It's like picking your favorite child. But I think personally, I have a background in education, and one of the MassChallenge companies that's come through is Resilient Coders. So Resilient Coders is taking juveniles that were once in juvenile detention centers and turning them into coders.
Okay.
And I think what they're doing is incredibly important. They're not just educating a very vulnerable population, but they're placing them in really high quality jobs and giving them incredible skills. So I'm really excited about the work that they're doing.
What's something about you that most people don't know?
I think the first thing is that I'm a pretty strong athlete. I've done several different marathons, triathlons. I like to swim all the time. I like to work every day, even in the winter. And so I'm really motivated by being active. And I think the second piece is that I do think one day I'd like to potentially run for office or be part of government. I think making changes at the policy level is something that I've always been attracted to.
What are some of your favorite tools that help make your life and work easier?
I actually think working with really smart people is something that's made my life easier. Whether it's just brainstorming out loud with somebody or grabbing a cup of coffee and figuring out kind of a problem together, I think working with people has been my most powerful tool.
What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
I would encourage my 20-year-old self to be even more confident and optimistic than I was. I think I was confident and optimistic. However, I think kind of that doubt can creep up. And I would basically tell myself to just kind of ignore that shadow and just persevere, because it's going to work out, and it always does. And so I would just kind of tell myself to just keep going and stay really confident and optimistic.
What are some of your favorite blogs or books?
I'm not a big blog person, but I'm a big book person. I love reading novels. I kind of like getting out of the weeds in the day-to-day. And so I love fiction, nonfiction. I love autobiographies. I also love reading the business things. I just finished Truck Full of Money. I finished 0 to 1. So I think I like to read a wide variety. It just gives me really great perspective.
So if you had to pick, say, one fiction and one nonfiction.
My favorite biography, I'm actually going to say, is the Steve Jobs biography.
Okay.
It was a massive read and a slog, and it was worth it because I actually think about things that I read in that book all of the time, whether it's design approach, building a team, physically laying out your office in a way that fosters collaboration. These are things and themes that I think about all of the time. And I think in terms of novel, I'm going to pick Americanah by Chimendi Ngozi.
Okay.
She, and I might not be saying her name right, but she can weave words together just in an unbelievable way. It blows me away. And that book in particular about an African person's experience in America and what it means to be African, what it means to be Black, what it means to be immersive in a white culture. It's just a really fascinating read.
Just a few final questions here to close out. So where can people find out more about MassChallenge?
You can find out more about MassChallenge at our website, masschallenge.org. I encourage you to join our newsletter, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We're very active in the social media scene, so we'd love to see you there.
And where can people connect with you online?
You can connect with me through LinkedIn. You can connect with me on Twitter. I'm at Rachel Spekman.
And last question, do you have any parting thoughts, advice, or suggestions for the audience?
If you've had an inkling of an idea, I think MassChallenge is the place for you. We help companies go from idea to startup to business to execution. So I would encourage you to seriously look at the application, apply. There's nothing to lose, nothing to risk. So I would say that's number one. And I think number two is if you're out there and you want to become more involved in startups, we're always looking for great experts, judges, speakers to become involved in our community. And we'd love to see you here.
Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. You'll get all my new episodes as soon as they're released right on your podcast app. And if you really liked today's episode, it would mean a lot to me if you could write a review of the podcast as well. Just go to startupbostonpodcast.com/iTunes. And remember, you can find all show notes with links at startupbostonpodcast.com. Until next time, if you have any feedback, ideas for guests, or just want to say hi, you can reach me at nic@startupbostonpodcast.com. Or reach out on Twitter at startupboscast. That's startup BOS cast. Cheers.